Welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I'll be covering every studio song the band has recorded and every bonus track that I can find. Each week we'll go over a new song from the beginning to where they are currently, and as they keep adding albums, I'll keep adding shows. Let the deep dive party begin.
In the magic garden, some were singing, some were dancing.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Uriah Heep, the Magician's Podcast. I have a fantastic co-host on. He is an amazing interviewer. I am in awe of his skills. I'm learning a lot from the shows that he does on how to talk to people because he does it way better than I do. Let's welcome him. He is really the founder of the Deep Dive Podcast Network, and he's got his show, T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the Other Side. Fantastic show. The links are in the show notes. Please do check it out. Terry Mathley. Terry, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I sound like 10 times more excited than I did when we were talking before, don't I?
Well, I will say one thing. I didn't found the network.
Oh.
Them calling me the chairman is just a take off for a joke on the full Frank Sinatra thing.
Oh, okay. Well, you seem to be kind of the prime mover of it, though.
Well, I was when I had a radio show, I had the three of them on and let them pick the songs and talk about their podcasts and stuff, and then they kind of adopted me, and that's how that all got started.
Well, it's a really cool network because the support that I get from all the other shows is fantastic. And we're from such diverse backgrounds and geographical locations, but everybody is just, supporting each other. Let's work together. I couldn't ask for a better group of people to be a part of.
Oh, yeah, they're all great.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So let's talk about you, your new show, T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the Other Side. You're 2 episodes in. By the time this comes out, your 3rd episode will have aired. This show is magic to me. You're such a craftsman as an interviewer. How did you learn that skill?
Well, I guess, I learned it from my radio days. I listened to interviews a lot, and most of them aren't very good. And so, if I had somebody on talking about a documentary they shot or a record they had or a book or whatever, I made sure that I really knew that information. I watched the movie. I've read the book twice, listened to the record a lot, knew all about it. When they had little minute details that I could throw in there, what about this? What about that? And then you could see, you couldn't see it because it's on the radio, but,
right.
But you could tell that they were engaged then because it's like, oh, well, this guy actually listened or watched or read or whatever. And also try to ask whatever we're going to ask and get out of the way and let them talk. Because I want the focus to be on them.
Yeah, that's a big thing, is giving them that breathing room to actually promote themselves or tell whatever story they want to tell. But that research is really the key, because if you dive into them enough and you find things that people don't talk about or don't ask them about, or they just don't seem to ever bring up in an interview, they get really pleasantly surprised and they tend to engage more, I find, when you're like, I know that this might be a more obscure question, but on this album or this project that you did, and they're like, wow, I didn't know you even knew about that. And I'm so excited somebody's bringing that up. It's a really cool reaction. And then they just tend to really engage on everything after that more.
Right. I think I learned it years ago from going to concerts and meeting the artists. And then, somebody in front of me would go, oh, you guys are great, man. And you could see their eyes just glossing over. And then I would get up there and I would talk about, what kind of guitar they played or what this and that. And then all of a sudden they'd come to life wanting to talk about that stuff.
Right.
And I think on a smaller level, I started with that. And then you just, you're right, though. If you can focus in on something smaller that they're not expecting. They're expecting you just to know your basic stuff. And if you can, know something else and draw them in like that, they really get into it, like you've heard on like a couple of my podcasts.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that. I remember when I met Roger Glover, they were on the second album with Steve Morse at the time. And so we're in the green room, we're just talking, and some guy, he comes in and he said, hey, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just have a question. And Roger's very, very polite guy. And he said, sure, what is it? And he said, why isn't Blackmore in the band anymore? And I'm like, I can't, I felt so bad for Roger, because I'm like, how many times have you had to answer this question? And is this ghost ever going to go away? Like, just it is what it is right now, but of course this was before we didn't really have the internet. I think we had like some very basic version of it at this point in time. This was like the late 90s. So it wasn't near what it is now. But yeah, I'm just like, I really try not to do that with my guests. There's things that you have to talk about, whatever project that they're there to promote, but I try and find things that they don't talk about a lot, or they don't get asked about a lot, or, maybe some hidden things, because they've got to be tired talking about themselves.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm tired of talking about me, and we're like 5 minutes in. Now it's a great show, and it's available right now on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher and YouTube. Is there anywhere else?
Spotify, Castbox, and it seems like someplace else. Or they can just go to my website, tbpcpodcast.com, and it's got all the platforms there.
Perfect. Yeah, that's the link I've got in the show notes. I actually just found you on Stitcher. I don't know when that connected. I think when the show was about to come out, I looked for you on Stitcher and it hadn't connected yet. So I'd been listening to you on Apple Podcasts, but I like Stitcher's interface better. Apple Podcasts seems to be just a little bit disconnected to me.
It actually went on Stitcher the later the first day. It didn't go quite as early as the others, but it was later that first day, because one of my family friends, she only listens on Stitcher. So that's the reason I initially signed up for that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I distribute through Podbean, it allows you to individually connect through all these different things. And Stitcher wasn't allowed until I think it was November or so. So I hadn't been on Stitcher for a long time. But the nice thing is they uploaded, or they back cataloged everything I'd released up to that point. So all of the shows are on Stitcher now, which is really cool. It's a great platform. I like Apple. I just find the interface a little difficult to use sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'm also old. So what can you really expect of me at this point? But today we're going to talk about the song Circus. And I'm really excited that you chose this one to come on the show and talk about. What was the decision behind that?
Well, long before the craze of let's do a ballad or acoustic song, that have a hit, I was always drawn to acoustic music. I mean, there's a whole bunch of it in that, in that decade, or especially the early part of the 70s, late 60s. And it didn't, to me, it just always hit me as it didn't sound like a band trying to do an acoustic song. It's just another song they did, and it was acoustic. And if you know what I mean, it still sounds like them.
Right.
And I don't know, it just hit me right off the bat. I mean, with the, it grabbed me from the harmonics at the beginning. Mm-hmm. It grabbed me from that, and then it really got my attention. And then, it's a short song, or, shorter than most of theirs. And it seems like it's over, and you're like, what, you play it like 4 or 5 times in a row.
Yeah, you're right, though. There are songs that are, and I think it's more in the singer-songwriter genre that are, really, this is an acoustic song. But there's other songs that just acoustic was the delivery method that doesn't make it feel like it's an acoustic song. I think there's a real difference there. And I think this is definitely the latter. I've never really thought about how they delivered it as much as just, this is just the way they chose to present it, because obviously they've got every medium at their disposal. They can do whatever they want at this point. I think it was the right choice, though. I don't think this would have been a very good song on electric.
No. having heard it the way we have, it doesn't seem like it would come out right.
Yeah, but see, that's kind of what I always go back and forth on. Do I feel that way because that's how I already know the song? Like if they say, okay, if Harrison Ford didn't play Han Solo and Christopher Walken did, would Star Wars have been a good movie? Like, I don't know, because I know it so well with Harrison Ford. How could I possibly say whether it would have been good or not with Christopher Walken? Because I'll never get that out of my head. It's a tough question because you really don't know at the end of the day. But I don't know. I just go with, well, this is what we have, so it doesn't really matter, But it is a good song. I think it fits really well on this album. And this whole thing came together. I mean, you were going to come on the show at some point, but this whole thing came together because you're doing this. You post an album, every day for a year, and you're up to 4 years now of doing it. And you had posted Sweet Freedom, and it was just at the time I was about to start working on the Sweet Freedom reviews. So it worked out really well, but I was pleasantly surprised that you chose Circus because it's not very, it's not one of those radio play songs that everybody knows.
Yeah. And this album, after it was, well, let's see, how can I put that? I don't mean it derogatory at all, but they're, as a matter of fact, I love their records before this, but, they were kind of how should you say it? It's not fantasy, but that kind of genre. I mean, this was more of a identify with a common man type record,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah. The last two albums were sort of mystical related, except
exactly.
There was a song here and there that wasn't, but they had that almost like they were a themed band, like Alice Cooper or something like that. But that was just really those two albums. And then they come out with Sweet Freedom, which really goes back to just rock and roll again.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think of, I talk a lot on the show and on my other show about how albums back then had a personality. They had an EQ, they had their own sound. They were very distinguishable from one album to another. What do you think of the overall sound of Sweet Freedom?
I've always kind of thought that it's just, how can I put this in the right words? I think it's more of the mixing and everything was more of it was like a straight ahead type thing. I mean, I'm not wording it right, but it was more of like you say, it was more of a rock and roll thing. And it was just, it was kind of combining that, their past along with the hard stuff and putting it all together. And
it just has it has a bit, like, it's not very sharp. There's not a lot of high end EQ on it.
Right.
And it just it gives the whole thing a little bit of a mellow overtone to it, which I really like. Very similar to, say, Machine Head from Deep Purple, which is not a very high gain album. It's hard rocker for sure. But when you listen to the mix, it has a little bit of a mellow overtone to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I love that sound. I think it really works with these songs. If they'd have done that on, say, Demons and Wizards, I don't think it would have worked.
Right. It's funny that you bring that up because I know some people, some reviewers actually think they, on a couple songs sounded like Deep Purple, that really? Kind of, from this album, they were kind of more of a Deep Purple mode, if you will.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is, so this, I think, came out in 73, which would have been when Who Do We Think We Are came out for Deep Purple.
Right.
I don't know what month, though, but Who Do We Think We Are actually had a very bright, high EQ sound to it, as opposed to Machine Head, which had that almost hazed over sound a little bit. So that's interesting on the timing. But yeah, I guess I could see that. It's just going back to the bluesy roots of rock and roll.
Yeah.
But some interesting songs on it for sure. Just the ones that I've covered so far, heading towards the end of the album. And one of my favorite bonus tracks, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Sunshine is one that I've loved since the first time I've heard it, and I really wish that had made it on the album. But there's really some magic on this album, I think.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Well, shall we get into the song?
Absolutely.
Let's do it. Okay, so you spent a lot of time playing guitar in a band. I'm not a guitar player. I get the basic logistics of it, but I don't really understand how to make the sounds right with the chords and stuff. But this seems like it would be just a relaxing song to play, just on the acoustic strumming side. Just really fun to just kick back and jam.
Yeah, and the apart from the pick the lick part that they did in there, which I can't do right now because of medical issues, but the verse itself is just basically three chords: E minor, C, and D, and those are really fun to strum chords. And it's I haven't played in 2.5 years, and it felt good just to play those, just play along with the record.
Are they easy to switch to?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of songs are like E, A, and D or something, but you don't see a whole lot that you have those chords in songs, but it's a little bit of a different combination of the chords. E minor, C, and D, and then I don't know. It's just a real. It seems simple, but it sounds really good.
I agree. And now we've not heard, I don't think, on any song up to this point, heard any harmonics in any song from Uriah Heep.
Right.
But that really just draws you in. I mean, that says, hey, there's something really fun and cool that you should check out about this. And it draws you in right from the first measures.
Yeah. I mean, that's what initially got my attention. I was just playing the album one day, and then I heard that, and I was like, what, and then I stopped. What else? Because in this day and age, you're doing like 10 things at once. But when I heard that, I stopped everything else and had to listen.
Yeah, it really draws you in. It's a nice touch too, and I really like the balance that they have here between the acoustics and the guitars, or the acoustics and the harmonics. I think the blend of it is just perfect.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Well, let's see what happens next. Well, before the vocals kick in, of course, they added. It sounds almost like a shaker, than it's not a tambourine for sure, but it sounds like a shaker that they've added in, which is a really nice touch. I'm a big fan of shakers, even in a rock song. If you layer it in well, it can really keep things moving.
Oh yeah,
yeah, and of course I'm a drummer, so I'm gonna lean towards the percussive instruments because those I understand.
Walking around this concrete garden, viewing all in vain, thinking why a dream is driving everyone insane.
Now that's a really interesting drum pattern because you hear the rim shots and you hear some hi-hat in there, but those are some pretty heavy hi-hat accents.
Yeah.
But I find them actually to flow nicely. I don't really find them to be distracting.
No, it's a good mix, and it seems to me that Lee Kerslake did that a lot on the hi-hat. The way of course, you don't normally hear it in an acoustic setting, but he always played just a little bit different, and I just always liked his playing. But it was interesting, the choice of words there about the concrete garden, because that's, of course, signifies like a city or type, urban setting like that. And it's well, I'll let it go on, but it's interesting how it starts off, what he's singing about, because sometimes when you hear it once or twice, you don't catch everything. And I think there's kind of a message there.
Well, that's the challenge, I think, with a band like this, because they put so much into every song. You have to hear it 3 or 4 times to really get a grip on at least the majority of what's going on. There's just so many layers.
I agree.
Yeah. But you're right. It is an interesting choice of words and certainly paints an immediate picture in my mind when I actually sit down and dissect that part. But to get to Lee, I think you're right. I like what he's playing there. I think it's unexpected, which is very typical of him. He's not your average drummer, that just plays the beat and a fill going into the chorus. But I almost feel like they said, Lee, you can sit this one out. And he's like, no, I got something. I can make this work.
I got this.
Yeah, exactly. I, as a drummer, I have been told that many times.
Then someone will come and make you feel the master in control. Still you're picking up and screwing anyone's got a soul.
Well, before we get to that lyric, because I know you're going to want to talk about that. I love that acoustic part. I just love that run right there.
Yeah, me too.
That's probably a very natural progression, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, it sounded like it. I mean, I didn't try to pick it out last night, but it seems like it would be.
Yeah. Now, I think we all know or have dated someone who could probably fit the lyrical category of this song. Right. It's interesting though that I love that the concept is just being so bluntly put out there. It's not metaphor. It's not anything. It's just like, you're a whore. Let's just lay it out on the table.
Yeah, he wasn't saying you've been seen with this group of people, or you're doing it was like screwing anyone that's got a soul.
Right. And I'm not even sure if that's the requirement.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I've been involved with some people that definitely wasn't a prerequisite.
Right. Yeah.
I've been here for too long to remember sights and sounds from this town of clowns. Making up, dressing up and walking around, thinking that you're Greta Garbos. I'm sorry, my dears, but we only sat down and laughed and sorrow. But it was you that opened the door, and it's that we thank you for.
So I don't know if you can hear it or not, but there is some very gentle hand percussion being played behind all of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It really adds a nice little touch to it without distracting or being, too much in the front. Really interesting vocal, though. I mean, he really does not like this woman.
Right.
It's pretty subtle.
Now I know in a live setting that they have somebody playing conga. So you think that was on this recording too, or?
It sounds like it. Yeah. I'm hearing just a little bit of gentle hand percussion, nothing too massive, even too busy. It's just little subtle hits here and there, which are really nice. I sent you the video of it, and I've got the link to it in the show notes on YouTube. But they did a concert, and Ian Anderson sat in with them from Jethro Tull, played some beautiful flute on this song.
Yeah, I watched that again last night.
It really makes me kind of wish that they had him in the studio, because I think it worked beautifully.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It would have been a great addition. Yeah.
Yeah. He's such a craftsman. And, to listen to him play is always a joy for me. And I don't even like the flute.
and his playing didn't get in the way of the song at all. Sometimes you have somebody set in and they're stepping on other parts or other people's stuff, and it just all flowed together just perfectly. You still had the acoustic guitar under it and everything. It was great.
That's a great point, because it is a lot of times when you bring a guest on the show, it's like, well, I'm here to shine in this song, but he plays really tastefully, and he did a few other songs with them that are on the full video. But it seems to me like he is an artist who understands the importance of the song, and not that, hey, I'm here to play.
Right.
Which I really liked. But yeah, it was a nice, because when I heard that had happened, I thought, oh God, that's just going to ruin it. But no, it was very tasteful. So check that out, guys, in the show notes. So I said in the beginning that the overall album did not have a lot of high-end EQ, but his voice does. Like, his voice is coming through crystal clear. It doesn't feel like it's separate from the music, even though it's on a completely different style of EQ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I also like the harmonics going on behind the vocals. I just think it really makes the song pop. But also, one thing I've always liked about David Byron's singing is that even when he repeats a verse, he finds a different way to do it every time, so that it's not just like copy and paste. Here's how I sang it. Here's how I should sing it again. Like, he's really alive as a singer.
Yeah, he is. Or he was, I should say. And he always just, you're right. He has a way of just fitting in with whatever, he didn't say, this is me, take it. He fit in with whatever was there.
Absolutely. Very good stuff.
Everyone insane. Everyone insane. Everyone's insane.
So somewhere in there, I don't know exactly where it happened because I didn't really notice it until just the end here, but we picked up an organ as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just nicely blended in. Again, very well mixed song.
Yeah, absolutely.
I really like the repetition on the vocal at the end. I think it fits in well with this song, and I love the way they just let the end ring out.
Yeah. Not a lot of words to this song, but it seemed, when you listen to it, it seems like there's more there, but I've got the words, down here on paper, and it's like, there's really not much there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's one of those cases too, where less is more. You can get in and make your point. They can certainly do it on the long scale with some of their, like The Magician's Birthday or some of their longer songs. But sometimes it's nice to just get in and out on a song and just kind of have it and have it be nice and then not destroy it with trying to do too many things. But yeah, you're right. It's from a lyrical standpoint, it's very simple and quick. The whole song on the clock is 2 minutes and 43 seconds. But if you take the space at the beginning and the end out, you're probably closer to 2:40.
Yeah.
Which at the time, if you think early 70s, that's totally radio playable. Without having to make any edits, you could actually just play the song as it is. They had quite a few songs that were around that length. And then some that were 4 and 5 minutes, and then some that were 10 or 12. Very common back in the early 70s to just have a real variety time wise.
Right.
But then you look at a band like Three Dog Night, and almost everything they did had that commercial ability to it, where every song was like 2.5, 3 minutes. Any one of them could be put on the radio. They were very formulated. Yeah,
they're very, very pop oriented, and that was your goal from the word go. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it was bad, because what they did was great, but that's what they shot for.
Exactly. Well, as far as I know, at least during the 70s, I don't think Three Dog Night actually wrote a single song.
Right.
Yeah, everything they did was someone else's, but they just did it, but they certainly did it their own way.
Yeah.
I love their version of Try a Little Tenderness, for example, but the reason I compare them to Uriah Heep is just on the side of the vocal harmonies, because we didn't hear it in this song, but anybody who's listened to almost any other show I've done has certainly heard at least some element of vocal harmonies, because that's one of their trademarks. And Three Dog Night was another group that was just a complete master of that.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think back on this song? Do you remember the first time you heard it?
Oh, boy. Probably it was 86 or 87. I think that's when I first bought this. I bought it I had it on cassette. So let's see. Yeah, probably 1986.
Pretty sure this is one I only had on album and CD. I had something on 8-track. I think it was Demon. It might have even been Demons and Wizards. I'm not sure, But yeah, that was probably around the same time, mid '80s, I would say, that I came into contact with the album. But that's kind of the beauty of music to me, and it's you can listen at any time, any place, and regardless of when it was created, it can create some. It could be something special to you. Like I could listen to something that Beethoven wrote that I've never heard before and have it just completely touch my heart. I love that about music. I don't really get that from anything else. If you watch a movie, it's too easy to see, based on just cell phone technology alone, when the movie was made, and then you start mentally putting it into a category. With music feels more timeless to me.
Yeah, and I remember something about buying this because when I went to the store, they didn't have. They didn't have a greatest hits collection, or they were out of them or something. And so I was just flipping through. I said, oh, well, this is the one that got stolen on it. And that's why I bought it. And then I heard this song later, but that was the reason I bought it.
Sure. Well, yeah. And if you were already following a band, if they came out with a new album, you were probably just going to get it. But if you weren't following a band and you really liked a song, you either got the 45 or you got the full album. And if you got the full album, then you get all the other gems and you can find out whether, what else the band has to offer. I feel like we're really missing out on that nowadays because I feel like most people just buy the hits.
Yeah. Yeah. In the MP3 era, that's how it's all geared. Mm-hmm. Just get what you like and that's it. Yeah. And a lot of times it's only one song or maybe two from a record.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like if I like a song by a band, there's a chance I'm going to like at least something else that they did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And $10 versus $1.29 is not that big of a leap to take a chance on, maybe one out of 7 or 8 tracks on that album being good.
Right. And the only time that I ever bought just one song was when we had to cover something and I needed, I didn't want some guy's whole collection, or if I just wanted to learn that song, or I didn't want to learn that song, but I had to get it. But usually, I'm even now I still buy full albums.
For a while I was doing that, and then I would never listen to them. Like I would just listen to that one song and go, okay, yeah, I'll get back to it. Like when I have some time to sit down, I'll get back and listen to the album, and I never did. And in the last 2 or 3 years, I've made a point to go through my catalog and really dig into what I've got. And I found some really good gems in a lot of those albums.
Oh, yeah.
But have you done the same thing I do where there's like bands that you really like and you'll listen to everything they do, and then there's a band that comes out with a song and you're like, oh my God, this song is great. You just never get into the band?
Yeah.
I don't get why we do that.
Yeah. I won't say who the bands are, but because I prefer to promote what you like instead of bashing what you hate. But that's happened a lot.
Well, I don't even mean hating it. I mean just like never even giving them a chance.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Okay, so I'll say the band because I fully intend to give them my time when I have it. But Zebra. So Zebra comes out with Who's Behind the Door. I love this song. It's an amazing song. It hits every point for me. And then Tell Me What You Want, I think was the other one that came out at that time in the early 80s. And I loved that. And I'm like, I really love this band. And I never bought one of their albums.
It's funny that you mentioned it because I had a Zebra song. I think it was, what's the song? What's one of them you mentioned about?
Who's Behind the Door?
Yeah, that was on a K-Tel collection. That's the only Zebra I've ever owned. And I did like that. But yeah, it is odd. I've never bought any other stuff.
Apparently, they're still around.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea. I found out, unfortunately, the day that they were playing here in Vegas, I found out like that afternoon, and I had already been tied up with a commitment, but I would have gone and seen them. But I mean, I fully intend to go back and really go through their catalog and see what else they have to offer because I love those songs so much. There has to be something more in there.
Yeah, and I totally don't dislike them at all. I just, for some reason, I never bought the stuff.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like when I first heard Uriah Heep, I'm like, oh, I like these guys. I want to see what else they did. And then I started, gobbling every album up that I could. But why didn't I do that with Zebra? Like, I just don't get where that line is with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, don't worry, Zebra. If you're listening, you're going to get a shot. I'm sure I will like you just fine. I just don't know why I didn't do it before.
You'll get a shot from both of us.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Terry, any parting thoughts on this song or this album?
Well, I mean, I have thoughts on the whole album, but I don't want to talk about that because you're going to cover those songs. I just really enjoy this album. I mean, it's the first Uriah Heep album I ever bought. I don't think I mentioned that before, but I got into music in late '82, and then I started playing in '86, and that's when I started buying a few things that I didn't have before. Some say, "Oh, you need to get Uriah Heep." You need to get. So, like I said, I went to the store, and that's the one I got, and I was like, "Oh no, that's not the one," but I liked it.
Yeah,
and it's always special to me because of that.
You know what's interesting about Heep too, I find, is that their albums are, a lot of them are really collections of different kinds of songs. It's not okay, so like I just did a review of the new Dead Daisies album, Holy Ground, and every song on that album is like a rocker. One might be a little faster, and one might be a little slower. It's all peak leveled, but the sound of it is like from one song to the next. It's very consistent, and that's fine. But what I like about Uriah Heep is you get a lot of variety on every album. Like this is an acoustic song, the one before it's an electric song, and none of that feels out of place somehow. Right.
And there's a ebb and flow to the whole thing, and that's what I like to hear.
Yeah, there's a lot of character.
And I'm not dogging the Dead Daisies at all. I mean, that's fine. If you got something that works and you go plow through with it, that's fine. But I tend to like albums that have that variety.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that in a bad way either. That's just, the style that they have, and that's what works for them and their band. The newest Alcatraz album was the same way. Every one of them a rocker, very fast guitar solos. But when the third song starts, it's going to have that same flair as the second and the same flair as the first. There's something to be said about consistency, especially if you're doing hard or aggressive rock, I think. But Heep seemed to just kind of ebb and flow, I think is the perfect way to put it. They had a lot of variety on their albums, and that's something that I really enjoy.
And I think the overall Heep sound was helped by having that organ sound. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not saying you can't do it when you're a guitar-based band, but when you have that, you're able to change the sound somewhat, and you know what I mean? Yeah. It's just, and like you said, you could just hear that at the end of Circus, just even putting that in just that little bit, makes a big difference, especially when you listen on headphones. Very much so. And for you guys that are listening in the car, because a lot of people have told me that they listen to the show on their commute. So for you guys that are listening in the car, I would highly encourage you at some point when you get home or you have, a few minutes, listen to these songs on a good pair of headphones and really hear what's going on sonically in these songs, because like I said, they layer so much in there. I don't think it was until I got this version that I even realized there was percussion in the song other than the rim shot and the hi-hat, like that. Yeah. Whether they're bongos or whatever they used in the studio, it probably was bongos in the studio as well. I don't think I ever realized that was even there. And it's handy to listen on your phone or to listen on the computer, but you miss a lot of little subtle things like that. And when you put a headphone on, you could say, whoa, I didn't hear that before. I mean, I'm talking songs that I've heard for the last 20 or 30 years and then listen to them again and go, oh, I didn't hear that before. Yeah. Like you said, you had neither. Mm-hmm. Yeah, same. And I found that too. Of course, I'm listening to the deluxe CDs, which were given a little bit of acoustic treatment for, sonic purposes for the release. But they've really held true to they didn't remaster them in a way that cleaned everything up. But they might have exposed some things that were a little bit buried in the mixes, in the earlier versions. But I like that because I think it's so important,
especially for me, I hate when bands remaster albums and those albums are cleaned up to the point where you don't recognize the album, the character of the album anymore.
Yeah, that happened a lot when stuff was when CDs first came in vogue, and then a lot of people remastered. Well, first of all, they just transferred them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was the same mix that was on the record or the tape. But then they started remastering for CD, and they always kind of had there for a while, they had that kind of tinny sound, and it just wasn't quite as full.
Well, in the beginning, they were just flat transferring them with no digital treatment at all, and you have to warm it up a little bit to try and compensate for the digital. So the first run of CDs that came out was terrible because they didn't know any better. And then they started warming them up and like, okay, well that sounds better at least. And that was like the first run of remastered CDs. Mm-hmm. And it started to get better from there. And now what we do is we spend thousands of dollars to compensate for the fact that we're not using analog gear. We simulate analog gear instead of just using analog gear. I don't know. You're right. But I don't miss splicing tape. I'll say that. That was the thing I hated doing the most because I was always just so nervous I was going to ruin it. And you're 1 millimeter off and you've ruined it.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't miss that at all. But Terry, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've really enjoyed talking about this song with you. I love your show. Guys, check out T-Bone's Prime Cuts on the other side. It is... Even if you don't know the guest, you will get a good hour of enjoyment out of it. Like I haven't known either of the guests that I've heard so far, didn't know who they were, but I could have listened to 3 hours of interview with either of them easily because it's just so enjoyable to hear. And you're talking to people that have done a lot of amazing stuff.
And those are the kind of people that, you don't probably don't know the name, but you've definitely heard the music.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And there's so many people that play on things that we just didn't know they did. In fact, it was a long time before I realized that Jeff Porcaro from Toto was the drummer on Michael Jackson's albums.
Oh, yeah.
I should have known because it's so perfect. I should have known it was him, but I had no idea for the longest time. And I think there's so many people that do side gigs as session players that you might know a project that they did and you might hear them all the time and have no idea it's them. So I'm really glad you're bringing a lot of that out. You're doing a great job. Keep it up, my friend.
Well, thank you.
Definitely. Well, come back and see us again. Let's do another song sometime.
Absolutely.
Sounds good. Thanks, Terry.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Uriah Heep, The Magician's Podcast. If you have enjoyed this show, please consider going over to Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast outlet, leaving a rating or a review. Be sure to subscribe to make sure that you are notified when new episodes are available. Please be sure to share this podcast with your fellow Uriah Heep enthusiasts and anyone who you think would like Uriah Heep, which should be everyone. And if you are so inclined, please feel free to contribute to the Patreon account. And if you are not a Patreon subscriber, you can also pay through the PayPal link on the website listed in the show links below. I would also like to thank Uriah Heep for their very generous support of the show. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you in the next episode. Happy days!